Chapter 4165. Just as Mu Zhe and the rest were in a daze, a figure suddenly appeared in front of them. Where are Hong Zhuang and the rest? Di Beichen's deep eyes were filled with coldness and ruthlessness. He suppressed his surging murderous intent and asked. Hearing Di Beichen's question, Mu Zhe and the rest could not help but be slightly stunned. They did not realize who was speaking. However, when they saw the cultivator standing in front of them clearly, their faces suddenly turned pale, and a trace of fear emerged in their hearts. Di Beichen. Mu Zhe looked at Di Beichen's cold eyes in horror. If he had met Di Beichen before, he would not have panicked like he was now. However, everything that Bailey Hongzhuang had done before had really shocked him. Bailey Hongzhuang had already caused them to fall into such a tragic situation. Now that Di Beichen was here, did it not mean that they were completely finished? At this moment, he did not doubt that if Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen had joined forces, they would have been completely wiped out. Let me ask you, where are Hong Zhuang and the rest? Di Beichen raised his voice, and the threat in his voice became more intense. Mu Zhe slowly opened his mouth, but thousands of thoughts ran through his mind. Then he said, I don't know. He knew that if Di Beichen knew that Bailey Hongzhuang had died in their hands, the latter would never let them go. Although he had suffered a huge blow, he did not want to die here. Even if his cultivation could not progress in the future, he could live well with his current cultivation. If he lost his life, he would lose everything. You don't know? Di Beichen raised his eyebrows, but his eyes became colder and sharper. Being stared at by Di Beichen's sharp eyes, Mu Zhe felt inexplicably guilty. Logically speaking, Di Beichen had clearly appeared later, and Bailey Hongzhuang did not leave anything behind. As long as he did not admit it, Di Beichen would not know everything at all. Thinking of this, Mu Zhe decided to insist on his statement. Otherwise, he would really be in danger. Yes, I've never seen them at all. The remaining cultivators from the three radiances were also frightened out of their wits by the previous incident. No matter what Mu Zhe said, they would agree with him. As soon as Mu Zhe finished speaking, Di Beichen directly grabbed his neck with one hand. His gaze was as sharp as a knife. The movement just now was clearly caused by Hong Zhuang's explosives and the deep pit here. And you're telling me that you've never seen them? Tightening his right hand, Di Beichen's eyes were bloodshot. When he saw this scene, he already had a bad premonition in his heart. He just did not want to admit it. He urgently needed Mu Zhe to give him an answer, to tell him that Hong Zhuang and the others were still fine. Seeing that Di Beichen had directly exposed his lie, Mu Zhe's expression turned ugly. He did not expect Di Beichen to be able to recognize the traces. Mu Zhe's right hand was already gone, and only his left hand was left. Faced with Di Beichen's grip, he was powerless. He could only struggle with all his might, but was unable to break free. Are you going to talk or not? Di Beichen increased the strength in his hand, and his eyes were cold. Clearly, if Mu Zhe did not answer, he would not hesitate to strangle him to death. I'll talk, cough, cough. I'll talk. Chapter 4166. Seeing this, Di Beichen loosened his grip a little, his eyes blazing like a raging fire. Speak. Bailey Hongzhuang. Mu Zhe's face was filled with confusion. He simply did not know how to answer. If he did not answer, Di Beichen would definitely kill him. But if he answered, Di Beichen would still kill him. What happened to her? If I tell you, can you let me live? Mu Zhe could not help but ask. If he could, he really wanted to leave this place forever and never meet Di Beichen again. You have no right to negotiate with me. Di Beichen's gaze suddenly turned cold. Since you are not willing to speak, then you can just die. Without waiting for Mu Zhe to react, Di Beichen's hand suddenly tightened, elemental energy surging in without hesitation, and directly snapped Mu Zhe's neck. Until the moment of his death, Mu Zhe still could not believe that he had died just like that. Di Beichen's bloody method could not help but shock the remaining three practitioners. The three of them could not help but shiver. Looking at Di Beichen, who was gradually walking towards them, they only felt that this guy was completely a demon. However, the most powerful cultivators in their team had already died, and the cultivation of the three of them was below the Starlight Realm. It was simply impossible for them to be Bewitching's opponent. Are you guys going to speak or not? Bewitching coldly asked. The three practitioners nodded repeatedly. If Muze did not speak, and Bewitching was so decisive in killing them, if they did not speak, their fate would naturally not be any better than Muze's. Bailey Hongzhuang is already dead. One of the practitioners among the three hurriedly said. As soon as this was said, Bewitching's expression suddenly changed. The originally gloomy and somewhat calm face suddenly collapsed, and the gaze he looked at the other party was incomparably terrifying. What did you say? The low and deep voice suddenly rose, filled with shock and ruthlessness. Li Buyo has been waiting outside the ruins. After Bailey Hongzhuang came out, he chased her all the way here. Bailey Hongzhuang did everything she could to kill Li Buyo and everyone else. However, she also paid a price and perished together with them. The cultivator quickly explained. Bewitching fell into silence. His hands gradually clenched. His nails dug into his palms, dripping with blood, but he didn't feel it at all. He knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was in danger. He only felt that kind of panic when something happened to Hongzhuang. However, he did not expect that he was still too late. Hongzhuang had actually fallen. He didn't confirm it again because he knew that the other party didn't have the guts to deceive him at this time, and the mess in front of him clearly told him this. Her heart was in so much pain that she was suffocating. Bewitching only felt that he had fallen into darkness in an instant. That kind of pain was simply indescribable with words. It was as if his entire person had sunk into darkness, and he couldn't see the slightest bit of hope. His heart felt as if it had been hollowed out in an instant, and his entire person became numb. The goal of moving forward in life had become nothingness at this moment, and it was as if there was no longer any meaning in living. That Xiren and the others are also dead. Bewitching asked. No, only Ren Ziheng and Chu Jinfeng died. The others all ran away. Chapter 4167. However, Bewitching was completely immersed in the news that Bailey Hongzhuang had fallen and did not have the energy to care about all this. He could only say that when Xiren and the rest were still alive. This made him feel less remorseful and more comforted. However, from the moment Bailey Hongzhuang had fallen, his world had collapsed. Hongzhuang had saved his life, and his happiness had been given to him by Hongzhuang. Now that Hongzhuang was no longer around, what was the point of him living on? Crimson Moon Sect. Li Buyo. A strong sense of hatred surged in Bewitching's chest, and his eyes instantly turned blood red. In all these years, he had never hated anyone so bitterly, because this damned fellow had ruined everything for him. His mind kept replaying Bailey Hongzhuang's voice and smile, recalling all the good things she had done, recalling how they had known each other and fallen in love. These blissful memories pierced through his heart. I've already told you everything. Can you spare my life? The cultivator asked probingly. Bewitching's heart was already in agony. Now that he heard that these murderers of Hongzhuang wanted him to spare their lives, the flames of fury in his heart instantly ignited. In the next moment, Bewitching did not hesitate to take the man's life. All of you deserve to die. Another cultivator saw Bewitching's decisive killing intent and immediately fled in another direction without hesitation. Bewitching clearly wanted to kill all of them and would not let them go. If he did not take this opportunity to escape, he would never have another chance. However, Bewitching did not give him the chance to escape. He had already locked onto him the moment he had set off. Once the Starlight Realm technique was used, the man immediately lost his life in his hands. He understood that Li Buyo had long become a cripple. Based on his abilities, he would not be able to harm Hongzhuang at all. The most hateful ones were these accomplices. If it had not been for them, how could Hongzhuang have fallen? He wanted these people to pay the price. He wanted the Crimson Moon Sect to pay the price. Bewitching walked up to the last cultivator. This cultivator's leg had been injured by Chu Jinfeng's explosives, so he could not move at all. He could only watch as Di Beichun slowly walked towards him and felt that death was drawing closer and closer to him. Just as Di Beichun was about to attack him, he hurriedly cried out, "Master Di, I have a piece of news for you. Please spare my life. I don't care what news you have to say." Di Beichun's heart had turned cold. Ever since he had found out that Hong Zhuang was no longer around, he no longer cared about anything. Seeing that Di Beichun was about to attack him, the cultivator hurriedly cried out, "What if I tell you that Bailey Hong Zhuang is not dead?" "What do you mean by that?" Di Beichun's dark eyes, which were like a pool of stagnant water, suddenly released a ray of light. He fixed his gaze on the cultivator. "You're saying that Hong Zhuang is not dead?" "That's right." The cultivator hurriedly nodded. Even though Di Beichun had been pleasantly surprised when the cultivator had said that, after thinking about it carefully, he understood that the cultivator must have been lying to him. Everyone believed that Hong Zhuang was dead. How could he have a different answer? Chapter 4168. Trying to trick me? Di Beichun's lips curved into a dangerous arc. "It's useless." "No." The cultivator quickly nodded. "I'm not lying to you. I'm telling the truth." However, Di Beichun ignored him. Seeing this, the cultivator spilled the beans and told them everything that he had seen before. "I didn't attack Bailey Hong Zhuang, really. I was already injured before. After they brought me here, they attacked Bailey Hong Zhuang. I stayed where I was the whole time, so I saw everything clearly. Bailey Hong Zhuang did intend to die together with Qian Feilong. After she ignited the explosives, I thought she was dead for sure. But at that moment, I clearly saw a white light flash and went inside. I swear I didn't see it wrongly. Believe me." The cultivator's face was filled with anxiety. Indeed, he did not make a move. Furthermore, he had witnessed the scene unfold before his very eyes. Although he was a little surprised when he saw it, after thinking about it, he felt that there was only one possibility. The white light clearly came from Bailey Hong Zhuang's angle. Bailey Hong Zhuang must have used some mysterious method to leave. Ever since he saw Bailey Hong Zhuang's abnormal fighting power, he felt that there was nothing Bailey Hong Zhuang couldn't do. It was possible to come back from the dead. If you don't believe me, you can look around. Even if there was an explosion and a lot of things dissipated, there should still be some traces left, right? There's nothing here that has anything to do with Bailey Hong Zhuang. There's nothing even related to the 3 contracted beasts. It's impossible that everything was destroyed so easily. Di Beichun originally thought that the cultivator was lying to him. But looking at how confident the cultivator was and how reasonable his words were, he suddenly felt that it was possible. He glanced at the cultivator. Now that the cultivator couldn't leave with his own strength, he didn't have to worry. In the next moment, he began to search the surroundings. Originally, he didn't want to face all of this, but now that he thought that there was still a chance of survival, he urgently hoped that all of this was true. As long as Bailey Hong Zhuang was still alive, it would be the happiest thing for him. Sure enough, there was no trace of Bailey Hong Zhuang around. Only then did he ask, "Is what you said true?" The cultivator nodded repeatedly. "It's true. I saw it with my own eyes." Di Beichun turned to look at the skeleton army in the distance. He knew that this was the entrance to the upper realm that Ao Lingxiao had mentioned. Could it be that Hong Zhuang had no other choice and was forced to enter the entrance to the upper realm? "All right, I'll believe you this time." He didn't know if the other party was trying to trick him into entering the army of skeletons. But as long as there was a possibility, he had to try. "Master D, look at me. I really can't do anything to Bailey Hong Zhuang. Can you spare me on account of the information I've given you?" Hearing this, Di Beichun calmly glanced at him. The wound on the other party's leg was clearly not from today, so it was quite believable. "All right, I won't kill you this time." Chapter 4169. There was no one else here except for him. Coupled with the frequent appearance of the skeleton army, it would be impossible for him to leave this place alive. After seeing Di Beichun leave, the cultivator could not help but heave a sigh of relief. However, looking at the scene in front of him, everyone was already dead. He was the only one left here, struggling at death's door. After rejoicing for a while, he understood his situation. If there were other cultivators alive in the team, then he could still return. However, with his current state, could it be that he had to crawl back? If he encountered the skeleton army along the way, with his crawling speed, only death would await him. Bewitching charged all the way inside. When the skeleton army saw someone appear, they began to attack one after another. Bewitching used his strongest technique, using all the skeletons in front of him as targets to vent his anger. His advancing speed could be said to be extremely shocking. He desperately searched around in all directions, only wanting to find Bailey Hongzhuang's figure. However, no matter how he called out Hongzhuang's name, there was no response at all. His heart gradually sank. He had finally found a glimmer of hope with great difficulty. Was it going to be destroyed again? He was unwilling to give up. As Bewitching searched all the way inside, after breaking through layers of obstacles, he finally arrived at the entrance to the upper realm. Looking at the entrance from afar, Bewitching felt a pang of heartache. Previously, he had agreed with Hongzhuang that they would enter the upper realm together after when Ziren and Shangwan Yingying had reached the Starlight Realm. He knew that Hongzhuang had misgivings about his feelings and had always wanted to help him find his family. He also hoped that he could find his family together with Hongzhuang. To him, as long as Hongzhuang was happy, it was fine. However, now, suddenly, Bewitching's gaze focused. He noticed that there was clearly a hairpin left on the ground in front of the entrance. Looking at the familiar hairpin in front of him, Bewitching was wild with joy in an instant. This is Hongzhuang's hairpin. Bewitching's face was filled with ecstasy. It seemed that the cultivator from before did not lie to him. Hongzhuang is not dead. Bewitching's eyes were filled with joy. At this moment, he felt as if he had risen from hell to heaven. God was not so cruel to him. Hongzhuang was still alive. Looking at the entrance in front of him, he walked in without hesitation. However, the moment Bewitching walked in, he clearly heard someone shouting behind him. Bewitching frowned slightly. This voice was not unfamiliar to him. It was Ziren's voice. However, by the time he heard it, he had already entered the teleportation array. It was too late for him to turn around. However, he was more anxious to find Bailey Hongzhuang. After the great battle, Bailey Hongzhuang must be severely injured. If he does not find Hongzhuang as soon as possible, Hongzhuang might be in danger. When Ziren stared at Bewitching, who had already entered the entrance, his expression was filled with exasperation. They had rushed over as quickly as they could, but they never thought that Bewitching would actually enter an entrance. What is this place? Shangwan Yingying stared at the entrance in front of her as a thick sense of confusion appeared on her face. She did not know that there was such an entrance in this place. Diyujue, Long Yanwei, and Izihua's faces filled with exasperation when they saw this. They had almost caught up to Bewitching. Chapter 4170. Young Master Bewitching has entered the upper realm. I'm afraid we'll have to trouble you to send someone to look for him. Long Yanwei looked at Diyujue. He knew that the latter had spent so many years to finally find Bewitching. Unfortunately, so many things had happened. Initially, they thought that they would finally be able to meet again. However, they were still one step away. One could imagine how terrible Diyujue's mood was at the moment. Diyujue's face darkened slightly as he stared at the entrance to the upper realm. He then said, "Of course." Although they did not manage to meet Bewitching this time, they now knew about Bewitching's identity and that he had entered the upper realm. With the D family's means, it would not take them too long to find him. It just so happened that he was about to return to the upper realm to tell the news to his family so that they would not be upset over this matter. No matter what, at least we know that Bewitching is fine. We can rest assured. A smile appeared on Izihua's face. The moment he saw that Bewitching was safe, he was relieved. At least Bewitching was still alive. If Bewitching had fallen, then they would be in big trouble. Fortunately, things were not that bad. It was just that Diyujue would have to spend a little more time looking for him. However, with the D family's means, it would not take long at all. The upper realm? Xiren and Shangwan Yingying looked at each other. There was a trace of doubt in their hearts. They did not understand what Yi Hua and the others were talking about. Since Beichen has already entered, why don't we just go in and look for them? Xiren could not help but ask. The entrance was right in front of them. They just had to go through it, and they would be able to find it. Why bother? Xiren, you don't know this, but the first time we enter this teleportation, we are randomly sent. Even if we go over now, we may not be able to be in the same place as Beichen. Yi Hua shrugged, his expression filled with helplessness. If they could see Beichen as long as they passed through, they would not hesitate here. Listening to Yi Hua's words, Xiren finally understood. He did not expect the teleportation to be so strange. No wonder Yujua looked so helpless. However, he still didn't know where he was. In the next moment, Yujua turned around and looked at the person beside him. He ordered, "Go to the Crimson Moon sect now and ask the sect master to give me an explanation. I'll return to the upper realm first." Now, that Beichen had gone to the upper realm alone, he probably did not have enough understanding of the situation there. Accidents could happen at any time. Now that he knew that Beichen was his son, his feelings as a father were fully displayed. He was constantly worried that Beichen would be in danger. Therefore, he had to return immediately and send someone to look for Beichen. Yes. Hearing this, Long Yanwei and Yi Hua looked at each other. They could tell from Yujue's tone that he was very displeased with the Crimson Moon sect. If they were not in a hurry to find Beichen, they would have charged straight to the Crimson Moon sect. Even so, the Crimson Moon sect would still have to give Yujue a satisfactory answer. Otherwise, the Crimson Moon sect would be in deep trouble. Soon after, Yujue turned around and looked at Long Yanwei and Yi Hua. He said, "Both of you, I'll take my leave first." "Take care," Long Yanwei and Yi Hua replied. Chapter 4171. Xiren, Yingying, the two of you can't go to the upper realm yet. I'll go look for Beichen first. Once I find Beichen and Hong Zhuang, I'll bring them back. At that time, I'll bring the two of you along. Yujue looked at Xiren and Shangwan Yingying with a very gentle gaze. The two of them were Beichen's best friends. If it wasn't for the fact that the two of them had yet to break through to the Starlight Realm, he would have directly brought them to the D family. However, the Upper Realm had a rule that those who weren't born in the Upper Realm and hadn't reached the Starlight Realm weren't allowed to enter. However, Xiren and Shangwan Yingying were already at the 9th level of the Purple Realm. They weren't far from breaking through to the Starlight Realm. He believed that with their aptitude, it shouldn't take too much time. "Thank you, Uncle." Xiren and Shangwan Yingying hurriedly cupped their hands. Ever since they found out that Yujue was Beichen's father, they changed the way they addressed him. Originally, they completely treated Yujue as a member of the same generation. Now that Yujue had suddenly become an elder, they sighed in their hearts. In the next moment, Yujue directly walked through the entrance under everyone's gaze. Only after Yujue left did Xiren and Shangwan Yingying look at Long Yanwei and Yi Hua like curious babies. At this moment, they were really full of doubts. They completely didn't understand what had happened. Why can't we go to the Upper Realm? Only those who have reached the Starlight Realm can enter the Upper Realm. There's a restriction in this transportation array. If you haven't reached that level, you won't be able to enter at all, Yi Hua replied. Hearing this, Xiren and Shangwan Yingying finally understood. So that's how it is. The two of us aren't qualified. Shangwan Yingying frowned slightly. From the looks of it, if we want to find Beichen and the others, we must quickly break through to the Starlight Realm. Otherwise, we won't be able to go at all. Ever since they came to Penglai Island, the four of them had been traveling together. Now that Beichen and Hong Zhuang had suddenly disappeared, the two of them were not used to it. Xiren nodded slightly. They indeed had to raise their cultivation as soon as possible. Instructor E, what is the Upper Realm? Shangwan Yingying asked curiously. Previously, she had never heard of any information about the Upper Realm. Now, she had to know what kind of place it was. Let's go. We'll talk on the way back. All right, it hurts. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but frown. Pain came from all over her body, and even moving became difficult. Wait, I could still feel pain? Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly stunned. She had clearly charged over to perish together with Qian Feilong. Why could she still feel pain? Immediately, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was filled with joy. Since she could still feel pain, it meant that she was still alive. However, in the next second, she felt a little worried. This feeling was so similar to the last time she had transmigrated. This kind of thing shouldn't happen again, right? Now, she only hoped that she would have the chance to see Bewitching again. Otherwise, being alive wasn't something to be happy about. As she slowly opened her eyes, she felt that everything around her was extremely unfamiliar. She had never seen anything like this before. She couldn't help but panic. Then, a handsome face appeared in front of her eyes. However, it was blurry and she couldn't see it clearly. She wanted to speak, but she didn't have the strength. Her eyes turned black and she fell into darkness again. "Miss, are you all right, miss?" Chapter 4172. When Bailey Hongzhuang finally regained consciousness, she found herself in her room. However, there was no one else in the room. "Xiaohei? Xiaobai? Bai Shi?" Bailey Hongzhuang hurriedly called out. She desperately wanted to know how the three beasts were doing. After such a great battle, the three beasts' injuries were extremely severe. It was obvious that they could not hold on any longer. She wondered how they were doing. At the same time, she wanted to confirm one thing. Was she still in the Shengxian continent? However, her answer did not receive any response. She could not help but feel a chill in her heart. Could it be, at this moment, the tightly shut door suddenly opened? Creak. A young, handsome figure walked in. When he saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had regained consciousness, the man's face immediately lit up with a joyful smile. "Miss, you're awake?" Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the unfamiliar, yet somewhat familiar face. It was as if she had seen this face before she had lost consciousness. "Thank you for saving me, sir." Bailey Hongzhuang cupped her hands in greeting. The man smiled and waved his hand. "It's nothing much. Don't mention it. Your injuries are very serious. I found a physician to take a look at you. The physician said that as long as you're awake, you'll be fine. However, these injuries will require some time to recover. If you feel any discomfort, feel free to tell me. There's no need to be courteous." Bailey Hongzhuang was a little surprised when she saw the other party's warm demeanor. Then, a relieved smile appeared on her face. It seems that this cultivator before her was very helpful. "Thank you, I'm fine." She could see the bandages on her body. Although her injuries were still serious, they would no longer threaten her life. She only needed to rest for a while, and she would be able to make a complete recovery. There would not be any sequelae. "That's good." The man smiled faintly. "I've just gone to get some food for you. You've been unconscious for a few days. I'm sure you're hungry, right?" Looking at the food in the man's hand, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood. "There's indeed some food. Thank you so much. I'm Bailey Hongzhuang. How should I address you, young master?" Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with gratitude. Before, her injuries were so serious. If no one had saved her, she really couldn't imagine what she would have become. Fortunately, his luck was not bad. He was saved by someone, and this person was a very good person. "I'm Wanyan Han. I'm very happy to meet you." Wanyan Han smiled. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly. She vaguely felt that she had heard this name somewhere before, but she couldn't remember where. "Young Master Wanyan, may I ask where I am now?" As she spoke, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze became nervous. This was what she was most worried about now. She only hoped that she was still in the world she was in before. "You're in Romance City now." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but be stunned. Romance City? She had never heard of this place and did not know where Romance City was. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's puzzled expression, Wanyan Han immediately understood. He smiled and said, "I forgot. This should be your first time in the upper realm, so you don't understand the situation here." Chapter 4173. You're saying that I'm now in the upper realm? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up when she heard the words upper realm. That was what she wanted to confirm the most at this moment. Aside from that, Nothing else mattered. Wan Yanhan nodded. That's right. Don't you know that you're now in the upper realm? I'm in the upper realm. Bailey Hongzhuang murmured to herself as a joyful smile appeared on her face. It seems that she was still alive. Even though she did not know how she had managed to reach the upper realm, as long as she was still alive, she would have the chance to see Bewitching again. Just this point alone was already the happiest thing of all. Lady Bailey, allow me to be nosy and ask, why were you so severely injured when you arrived? Could it be that you were injured during the battle with the skeleton army? Wan Yanhan could not hide the puzzlement in his eyes. When he had first seen Bailey Hongzhuang had been lying unconscious at the entrance, covered in blood. When he had approached, Bailey Hongzhuang seemed to still be conscious. However, before she could say a word, she had fainted again. Hence, he had brought Bailey Hongzhuang back to the inn and found a physician to treat her. Bailey Hongzhuang gently shook her head. I was surrounded and attacked. I had no choice. Even though Bailey Hongzhuang had explained it very simply, Wan Yanhan understood immediately. You were surrounded and attacked in the training grounds? Who would besiege a woman like you? The members of the Crimson Moon sect. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes turned gloomy and cold at the mention of the Crimson Moon sect. If it had not been for these damned fellows, she would not have ended up in such a situation. However, she believes that her final attack must have caused them to pay a heavy price. Wan Yanhan's eyes changed when he heard the words Crimson Moon sect. He asked, the members of the Crimson Moon sect had surrounded and attacked you. Are you a member of that organization as well? At first, Bailey Hongzhuang did not pay much attention to it. However, when she saw the sudden change in Wan Yanhan's expression, she could not help but feel worried. Could Wan Yanhan also be a member of the Crimson Moon sect? If that was the case, then it would be troublesome. I am from Penglai Palace, Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Penglai Palace? A big smile appeared on Wan Yanhan's face. You actually came from Penglai Palace? What a coincidence! I'm also from the Penglai Palace. I didn't expect you to be my junior sister. Wan Yanhan appeared to be very pleasantly surprised. He did not think that it would actually be so coincidental that the person he saved was his little junior sister. Bailey Hongzhuang was stunned for a moment before a smile appeared on her face. It turns out that Prince Wanyin is also from Penglai Palace. At this point, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes suddenly widened and she asked curiously, Young Master Wanyin, are you Wan Yinling's brother? At this moment, she suddenly understood. Previously, she had always felt that Wan Yanhan's name was somewhat familiar. However, she could not remember where she had heard it from. Now that she knew that Wan Yanhan was from Penglai Palace, she suddenly remembered that when Ren Ziheng introduced Wan Yinling to her, he had specially mentioned his elder brother, Wan Yanhan. However, Wan Yanhan had not appeared in Penglai Palace for a long time because he had already come to the upper world. That's right, Wan Yinling is my younger brother. The smile on Wan Yanhan's face gradually widened. Is he doing well in Penglai Palace? Chapter 4174. After knowing each other's identity, Bailey Hongzhuang and Wan Yanhan's relationship became more harmonious. Wan Yanhan also felt that it was a coincidence that he could meet a cultivator from the inner palace of Penglai again. However, he did not talk too much with Bailey Hongzhuang. After all, what Bailey Hongzhuang needed most now was rest. After Wan Yinling left, Bailey Hongzhuang entered the primordial chaos ring. Xiao He, Xiao Bai Shi, and Bai Long were all in a coma at the moment. The three beasties' fur was covered with blood, and their wounds had begun to scab. However, their situation was still very bad. However, Bailey Hongzhuang breathed a sigh of relief after confirming that they were still alive. For her, this was already the best news. She was worried that the three beasties would leave her in this battle. Fortunately, they were still alive. Dragging her exhausted body, Bailey Hongzhuang began to apply medicine to the three beasties. They had all fallen into a coma because of their serious injuries. They had to be treated as soon as possible. Otherwise, the effects would be even greater in the long run. If it were any other day, Bailey Hongzhuang would naturally deal with all of this very quickly. However, with her current physical condition, it was very slow. After dealing with all of this, she only felt that she was about to collapse. She immediately returned to the house to rest. However, Bailey Hongzhuang still could not understand. How did they come to the upper realm in such a situation? This really did not make sense. However, she could not think of any explanation at all. At this moment, no one could give her an answer. She could only put this doubt in her stomach for the time being. Perhaps she would know when the three beasties woke up. Bailey Hongzhuang's recovery speed was not slow. She was a doctor herself. After treating herself, her recovery speed was extremely fast. When Wan Yanhan saw Bailey Hongzhuang's recovery speed, his face was full of shock. Her previous injuries were clearly so obvious. Logically speaking, it should not be possible to recover in a short time. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's recovery speed was so amazing. It was much faster than what the doctor said before. Wan Yanhan learned some information about Wan Yanling from Bailey Hongzhuang. However, Bailey Hongzhuang did not know much about Wan Yanling. She just told him the news that Ren Ziheng told her. After knowing that Wan Yanling was doing very well in Penglai Palace, Wan Yanhan felt very happy. Now, he was only waiting for Wan Yanling to come up to join him. After getting along like this, Bailey Hongzhuang also understood why Wan Yanhan could obtain such a reputation in Penglai Palace. He was indeed a very good person. Senior brother Wan Yan, do you know where the entrance is? I want to go back. Wan Yanhan looked at Wan Yanhan Han's. Hongzhuang Wan Yanhan. Wan Yanhan said Han's injuries. She understood that Di Beichen must be very worried about her safety now. He did not know how she was doing. Only after she went back could Di Beichen be at ease. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Wan Yanhan could not help but frown and said, "You can't go back now." Why? Bailey Hongzhuang was stunned. Her face was full of confusion. Chapter 4175. Hearing Wan Yanhan's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze changed slightly. Thinking about it this way, it was indeed very reasonable. You should know that the cultivators in the upper realm, other than the younger ones, are all stronger than the cultivators in the lower realm. In fact, they are much stronger than the cultivators in the lower realm. If the cultivators from the upper realm go to the lower realm, who in the lower realm would be their match? Because of this, it would only destroy the balance in the lower realm. Therefore, there is a rule that the cultivators from the upper realm cannot go to the lower realm as they wish. However, the people from the upper realm would not want to go to the lower realm. After all, there is nothing better than the upper realm. On the contrary, it is very backward. Wan Yanhan explained. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned slightly, but still did not give up. Then under what circumstances can one go to the lower realm? This is very troublesome. First, one must stay in the upper realm for a long time and pass the examination of the upper realm's cultivators union before one can go to the lower realm. If not, I would have gone back to see my brother long ago. However, looking at the current situation, I can only wait for him to go to the upper realm to meet up with him. So troublesome. Bailey Hongzhuang's clear eyes were filled with doubt. Previously, when she heard A.O. Lingxiao say that going to the lower realm was not so troublesome, this Wan Yanhan should not have the need to lie to her. It is so troublesome. A.O. Lingxiao's expression was filled with helplessness. Other than that, there is another possibility. However, it has nothing to do with us. What is it? I heard that the people from the upper realm's big forces can go to the lower realm as they wish, because the balance in the lower realm is also controlled by them. However, they belong to a big force and have their own restrictions. Therefore, after going to the lower realm, they will not run amok. Wan Yanhan slowly said. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang finally understood. No wonder A.O. Lingxiao could go to the lower realm directly. It was related to his identity. Looking at it, the possibility of her going to the lower realm was very slim. Since it is so, then I only have one method. That is to go to the D family. Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix-like eyes narrowed. She had no way to ascertain when Beichun would head to the upper realm, but she was certain that Beichun would definitely return to the Supreme D clan. After all, it was very likely that his family was located there. As long as she waited there, she would definitely see Beichun. Senior brother Wan Yan, do you know that there's a D clan in the upper realm? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Wang Yanhan nodded slightly. After some thought, he said, I think I've heard of it before. It's a top-notch clan, right? Why are you asking this? Then do you know where the D family is? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. As long as she could find the D family, she would be able to reunite with Beichen sooner or later. I don't know about that. Wang Yanhan shook his head. This kind of great power is really too far away from us. I've only heard of its existence like a story, but it's only limited to the existence of this family. Other than that, I don't know anything about them. Then is there any way to find out? Bailey Hongzhuang asked unwillingly. Chapter 4176. Little junior sister, with our current strength, it's basically impossible for us to come into contact with such a large power. Moreover, we are surrounded by cultivators who are similar to us. I'm afraid that the information they know is more or less the same as us. They only feel that such a large power is unreachable and they are unable to understand it. I heard that such a large power has a very strong, invisible barrier. If there is no one leading the way, it's basically impossible for ordinary people to find it. Why are you looking for the D family? Wang Yanhan's face was filled with confusion. He completely couldn't understand why Bailey Hongzhuang had just come to the upper realm. Logically speaking, such a large power like the D family shouldn't have any connection with her. However, she had been trying to find the D family. This was really too strange. The reason why I came to the upper realm was completely by accident. My husband and my friends are still in the lower realm. They don't even know that I'm here. I'm sure that they are looking for me now. Previously, we had heard of the D family. I feel that if I go near them, they might be able to reunite when they come to the upper realm in the future. Bailey Hongzhuang's reply was half true and half false. Right now, they weren't completely sure that Beichen was a member of the D family. Before they were sure, it was better not to say anything. I see. Wang Yanhan finally understood. I didn't expect that little junior sister is already married. I'm sure that the other party must be a very outstanding young talent. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Indeed, little junior sister, I understand your anxious feelings. However, there is no other way for now. Think about it. Since you're unable to find the D family, it would be similarly difficult for them to find you when they come. Therefore, why don't you recuperate first and slowly think of a way in the future? I believe that there will be a day when you two will reunite. Wang Yanhan smiled and said, Thank you, senior brother. I hope so. After Wang Yanhan left, Bailey Hongzhuang's face revealed a depressed expression. When she thought of Beichen's expression when he thought that she might have died, she couldn't help but worry. Furthermore, judging from the situation at that time, there are definitely still people alive in the Crimson Moon sect. Once these people returned, the news of his death would basically be confirmed by them. Under such circumstances, Beichen would definitely want to avenge him. In that case, not only would Beichen be in danger, but he also didn't know when he would come to the upper realms. I never thought that things would turn out like this. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed faintly, her expression full of helplessness. At this moment, she suddenly felt a slight movement from the Chaos Ring. Her eyes lit up, and she immediately entered the Chaos Ring. As expected, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately noticed that Xiao He and Xiao Bai had woken up. However, Bai Shi was still unconscious and showed no signs of waking up. Master, Xiao He and Xiao Bai were overjoyed to see Bailey Hongzhuang. Master, you're still alive. That's great. The two beasts heaved a sigh of relief. They had thought that they were all dead from their previous miserable state. They never thought that everyone was still alive. That was great. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. That's right. It's a good thing that we're still alive. Chapter 4177. I'm fine now. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. You're still worried about me. You should be worried about yourselves now. Your injuries are very serious as well. Even though I've already treated you, you'll still need some time to fully recover. There's no need to rush it. Hearing this, Xiao He and Xiao Bai appeared very carefree. As long as we're still alive, it's not a big deal. This situation was much better than what they had imagined. At least everyone was still alive. Injuries were a common occurrence. They had suffered many injuries on a daily basis and were already used to it. However, Xiao Hei's gaze turned towards Bai Shi. Master, why hasn't there been any movement from Bai Shi even though we've already awakened? Logically speaking, Bai Shi's injuries should have been about the same as theirs. Since they had already awakened, Bai Shi should be more or less awake as well. However, based on Bai Shi's current condition, it was clear that he did not show any signs of awakening. Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but turn towards Bai Shi. Her expression was filled with deep thought. I've already checked on Bai Shi's condition. His injuries are very serious, but they are not life-threatening. As for the fact that he has not shown any signs of awakening, he should be about to break through. Bai Shi's cultivation speed has never been slow. This time, after absorbing the energy from the black pool, Bai Shi had even come into contact with the barrier to the starlight state. If this had been in the past, it would have taken some time for him to break through. However, he had been hovering on the brink of death in this battle. Perhaps Bai Shi had profited from this disaster and broken through. Upon hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's reply, Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai's initial worries turned into pleasant surprise. So that's how it is. That's great. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and nodded. Even though they had been in great danger this time, it was a good thing that they had managed to avert disaster in the end. However, they had been forced to separate from Bewitching. This was something that she could not do anything about. Master, what are you thinking about? Noticing Bailey Hongzhuang's mood, Xiao Hei could not help but ask, did something happen that made you unhappy? Bailey Hongzhuang immediately told them about their current situation. After hearing everything, Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai could not help but be dumbfounded. They did not expect such a situation at all. In that case, we can only wait here for Bewitching and the others to come? Not bad. According to my judgment, Bewitching probably won't come alone. He will definitely wait for Xiren and Yingying to break through before coming. Although Yingying and the others are talented in cultivation, it will take some time for them to make a breakthrough. However, as long as we wait in Rome and City, they will come sooner or later. If only it were that simple. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head helplessly. This teleportation is random. I happen to be teleported to Rome and City. There's no way to determine which city Bewitching and the others will be teleported to. If it wasn't a city, they probably wouldn't have come here. Only the D family is where Bewitching will definitely go. She did not expect such a situation at all. Now, this was the only way she could think of. Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai could not help but be dumbfounded. In such a situation, they really could not think of a better way. Chapter 4178. By the way, do you know how we came to the upper realm? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai. This was something that she had never been able to figure out. Back then, she had thought that she was definitely going to die. She never thought that she would actually survive in the end. However, even after thinking about it for a long time, she still could not figure out how she had managed to accomplish all this. I don't know. Xiao Hei shook her head. I thought that I was going to die. I don't know what happened after that. I did notice a flash of white light at the time. Then, I was taken back into the chaos ring. However, I don't know what happened after that, said Xiao Bai. A flash of white light? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. A trace of astonishment appeared in her eyes. Xiao Bai nodded. That's right. There was a flash of white light. Although the scene was very chaotic, I still saw it clearly. Now that Xiao Bai has mentioned it, I remember that there was a flash of white light at the time. I thought that it was the light before death. Xiao Hei spread her hands and said innocently, it looks like that flash of white light saved us. Bailey Hongzhuang pondered. But what was that white light? Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai shook their heads. They did not know either. They only remembered that something like that had happened before. Bailey Hongzhuang kept thinking. Usually, there was no such thing as a white light around her. Moreover, this white light had saved them, so it was obviously a kind gesture. Not only that, this white light should be very powerful. Otherwise, it would not have been able to save them. After some thought, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but turn her gaze to the unconscious white dragon not far away. She said, do you think this white light has something to do with the white dragon? As Bailey Hongzhuang spoke, Xiao He and Xiao Bai could not help but look at each other. Then, they nodded and said, "That is indeed possible. The white dragon is so powerful. It would have been able to take us away under those circumstances. However, the white dragon was already unconscious. How could it have taken us away at the critical moment? We can't say for sure now. We will know once the white dragon awakens," Bailey Hongzhuang slowly said. This was the only possibility that she could think of at the moment. Apart from this, she really could not imagine where the white light had come from. "Let's hope that the white lion and the white dragon will wake up soon," Xiao He said with a smile. No matter what, they were in a good situation now. They just needed some time to regroup. In the following days, Bailey Hongzhuang recuperated and rested in the inn. After Xiao He and Xiao Bai woke up, they recovered very quickly under Bailey Hongzhuang's treatment. However, the white lion and the white dragon were still in a deep sleep. They showed no signs of waking up at all. After Bewitching arrived in the upper realm, he immediately began to search for Bailey Hongzhuang. However, after asking around, he discovered that not a single cultivator had come to the upper realm before his arrival. This answer made him feel very strange. He had clearly seen Bailey Hongzhuang's hairpin. It cannot be fake. However, there was no need for her to lie to him. This made him feel very helpless. Chapter 4179. It turned out that the entrance to the upper realm was random. It seemed that Hongzhuang had probably arrived at a different city from him. That was why he did not see Hongzhuang's figure. This made his originally very depressed mood a little better. At least this proved that there was a high chance that Hongzhuang was fine. He just had to go to a few more cities in the upper realm to find Hongzhuang. This was nothing to him. As long as he could find Hongzhuang, it was worth it no matter how much effort he had to put in. After understanding this point, Bewitching began to embark on the journey to find Bailey Hongzhuang. Although the upper realm was very big and it was not easy to find Bailey Hongzhuang, Bewitching was confident. As Bailey Hongzhuang's injuries gradually healed, she began to be curious about the upper realm. Originally, she had always been curious about whether the Bailey family still existed in the Shengxian continent after 1,000 years. Therefore, she deliberately asked Wang Yanhan. Unfortunately, Wang Yanhan had never heard of the Bailey family, so she could not confirm. Although it was now 1,000 years later, and she had nothing to do with the Bailey family, she only hoped that the Bailey family still existed. As long as she thought of such a place, she would feel a sense of familiarity in her heart. On this day, Bailey Hongzhuang walked out of the inn with interest. The sun shone on her body and gave her a burst of warmth. Her mood, which had been depressed for many days, became sunny at this moment. With a bright smile on her delicate face, Bailey Hongzhuang walked on the streets of Rome city. Looking at the extremely lively scene around her, her eyes became brighter and brighter. "Master, the upper realm is even more lively than Penglai Island." Xiao Hei's eyes flashed with surprise as she constantly looked around. Rome city was obviously a very big city. It was extremely lively, and there was an endless stream of people. However, there were only shops around and no stalls. Most of the shops sold food and treasures that cultivators needed for their cultivation. If it was in the lower realm, there would always be many delicious and fun things. However, there were even more things related to cultivators here. Walking on the road, Bailey Hongzhuang noticed that the passers-by were often armed, and the aura they released was very shocking. It was obvious how powerful these people were. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed inwardly. The cultivators from the upper realm were indeed extraordinary. Her aura could be said to be at the bottom of this group of people, so she felt a lot of pressure. It seems that we really have to keep a low profile in the upper realm. Otherwise, if we accidentally offend someone, it won't be easy to clean up the mess. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed inwardly. Normally, the probability of them getting into trouble was not small. There were enemies everywhere, and she was alone, so she had to be careful. Otherwise, if there was trouble, it would not be easy to deal with it. "Master, don't worry. We won't get into trouble," Xiao He said. Now, She also knew that the environment they were in was not easy. Naturally, she had to be more careful and not get into trouble. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. I know that you have always been very obedient. Chapter 4180. The sky was clear and the sun was shining brightly. Du Jue felt that it had been a long time since he had been so happy to return to his family. Although he had yet to reunite with Beichun, he believed that it was only a matter of time before he found Beichun. In the past, every time he returned, he would feel extremely depressed. Since the day Beichun disappeared, not only did he have to endure his own heartache, but he also had to face all kinds of pressure from his family. His parents' resentment towards him was imaginable. Most importantly, his wife was unwilling to see him. He had always loved Lin Yinxing deeply, but he had done something that hurt her the most. He was extremely regretful. Now that he had finally brought back news of their son, he hoped that Yinxing would be happy. When he thought that Yinxing might be happy because of this, the corners of his lips could not help but curl up. Even his brows became bright and sunny. When Lin Xian heard that Du Jue had returned, a trace of joy appeared in his eyes. Then, his face darkened again. He still has the nerve to come back. Xiao Wanrong noticed the change in Lin Zhao's expression and could not help but roll her eyes. Old man, stop pretending. You're obviously very happy that Yu Jue is back. How am I very happy? Lin Xian raised an eyebrow. I can't wait for him to not come back. After you chased Yu Jue away the last time, he has been staying outside for a long time and has not come back. I don't care. You're not allowed to do that again. If you chase your son out and never come back, I'll see what you're going to do. Xiao Wanrong could not hide her dissatisfaction. You can't find your grandson. If you chased your son away, I'll see what you're going to do. A loving mother leads to a wastrel son. Lin Xian shook his head helplessly. I can't be bothered to talk to you. I don't understand how I gave birth to such an idiot. He even lost his own son. If word gets out, he'll be a joke. Think about me. I've been so powerful for so many years, but in the end, I was laughed at by everyone for what my stupid son did. Most importantly, my precious grandson is missing. How can I not be angry? Then there's no use in scolding him. Xiao Wanrong's expression was full of helplessness. Do you think Yu Jue will feel good after such a thing happened? You don't have to say it. He's already blaming himself. So many years have passed, and Yu Jue has been searching all this time. What's the point of scolding him like this? It's all your fault. Lin Xian blew his beard and glared, the displeasure on his face still not dissipating. As long as I can't find my precious grandson, he will inevitably be scolded. Why is it all my fault? Xiao Wanrong couldn't help but ask when she saw that Lin Xian was talking about her again. Isn't it all because of your stupid son? Oh. Xiao Wanrong's voice suddenly rose. Then according to what you mean, could it be that I can give birth to him alone? I'm too lazy to talk to you. As soon as she finished speaking, Xiao Wanrong directly sat down and turned her face to the other side, clearly unwilling to pay any more attention to Lin Xian. After he noticed that Xiao Wanrong was angry, Lin Xian couldn't help but say, All right, old woman, aren't I angry? You know my temper. Chapter 4181. Xiao Wanrong and Lin Xian had been together for so many years, so she knew his temper very well. He was stubborn on the outside, but soft on the inside. No matter what happened, he was unwilling to admit it, but he did not actually think that way. Ever since Du Jue was chased away by Lin Xian, she could tell that he missed Du Jue very much, even though he was unwilling to admit it. Every once in a while, he could not help but ask about Du Jue. He had always been worried about him. However, every time Du Jue returned, the old man would inevitably think of this matter again and chase Du Jue away. It had been like this for the past few years. This time, Du Jue had returned. When Lin Xian heard the news, he had clearly been exceptionally happy. However, when he saw that she was present, his expression immediately changed. She really could not do anything about this old man. It's fine if you bring this up in front of me, but please don't bring it up in front of my daughter-in-law. You clearly know how sad she is because of this. The two of them are not together because of this. If you keep bringing this up, won't you be poking at her heart? Xiao Wanrong sighed. They had been living very well in the past, but ever since this happened, everyone had a knot in their hearts. They only wanted to find their precious grandson. Logically speaking, with the D family's abilities, it should not be too difficult. It was just a pity that he had gone to the lower world. It would be much more complicated to find him. They had not heard any news about their precious grandson for so many years, so they were actually very upset. Moreover, they all knew about their grandson's constitution. It had been over 20 years. Although they were unwilling to give up, they knew all too well what would happen once the cursed constitution flared up. As a result, they knew that the chances of finding him were just too slim. I understand. Di Linxian nodded and sighed. You should talk to Yinxing more when you're free. Yu Jue is indeed in the wrong, but he can't just ignore Yu Jue like this. That's true, but you don't understand how a mother feels when she loses her child. Actually, Yinxing has been suffering all these years. Alas, in the end, it's still Yu Jue's fault. See, wasn't I right? Di Linxian shrugged. It's all because of that stupid son of mine. Not only did he ruin my reputation, but he also made everyone suffer. Old man, don't you care about your face? How long has it been since you went out after this incident? How can I go out? Every time they ask me about my grandson's whereabouts, I can't answer. I might as well not go out. You say that Elder Su, the moment I went out, he kept telling me about his precious grandson's achievements. Isn't he deliberately trying to anger me? If it weren't for the fact that I don't know where my precious grandson ended up, how could he be worse than my grandson? Di Linxian couldn't help but blow his beard and glare. Xiao Wanrong obviously knew about this situation and couldn't help but sigh. Let's not talk about anything else. When Yu Jue comes over in a while, don't scold him anymore. Just bear with it. Chapter 4182. Di Linxian remained silent. It wasn't that he wanted to scold Yu Jue on purpose every time, but he really couldn't control his temper every time this matter was brought up. Not long after, Yu Jue walked over. Father, mother. Yu Jue bowed respectfully to the two of them. Xiao Wanrong nodded and quickly walked in front of Yu Jue. Yu Jue, looking at you, you've lost a lot of weight. You've been working hard recently, haven't you? Xiao Wanrong's face was full of concern. Although she complained that Yu Jue had lost her precious grandson, she also felt very sorry for her son. For the past 20 years, her son had been running around outside tirelessly and had not relaxed at all. She also felt sorry for him. While Xiao Wanrong was speaking, Di Linxian could not help but size up to Yu Jue. Especially when he found that the latter had indeed lost a lot of weight. He could not help but frown. Deep in his eyes were concern and worry. Mother, I'm fine. Yu Jue shook his head with a faint smile on his face. How have you been recently? We're all fine. Xiao Wanrong smiled faintly. Don't be in a hurry to leave this time. You've been away from home all these years, and it's been very tiring for you. This time, you should rest at home for a while. Yu Jue shook his head. I still have to go out again. Di Linxian had not spoken at first, but when he heard that Xiao Wanrong wanted Yu Jue to stay at home for a while, he heaved a sigh of relief. In fact, it was not his intention to chase his son out. However, when he heard that Yu Jue had actually rejected him, he could not help but feel even angrier. You still have the nerve to come back. Didn't you say that you wouldn't come back if you couldn't find your grandson? Di Linxian asked. Old man. Xiao Wanrong tugged at Di Linxian, her eyes full of resentment. She had just warned this old man, but she did not expect him to say such things in the blink of an eye. It wasn't easy for her son to come back. She wanted to see Yu Jue more. He didn't think that Di Linxian would say something like that. Wasn't he trying to chase him away? If it was any other time, Yu Jue would have remained silent upon hearing Di Linxian's words. However, a smile appeared on his face at this moment. Father, mother, I've finally found Beichen's whereabouts, Yu Jue said with a smile. Following Yu Jue's words, there was a moment of silence in the room. Di Linxian and Xiao Wanrong couldn't help but look at each other. Both of their eyes were filled with astonishment. What did you just say? Di Lin Xian's expression suddenly changed, and his eyes were filled with nervousness and doubt. Say that again. Xiao Wanrong hurriedly grabbed Di Yujue's hand, looking nervous and anxious. Yujue, did you just say that you found the whereabouts of my grandson? Di Yujue nodded. That's right. Then where is he? Is he outside? As she spoke, Xiao Wanrong could not help but walk out of the room. Even Di Lin Xian could not help but walk out as well. This news was simply too surprising. After searching for so many years, they had never let go of the obsession in their hearts. However, they also knew that the chances of finding him were getting smaller and smaller. Chapter 4183. Father, Mother, he didn't come back with me. Di Yujue hurriedly explained when he saw how anxious his parents were. Hearing this, Di Lin Xian and Xia Wanrong finally withdrew their gazes from outside the house and looked at Di Yujue in confusion. What do you mean? It wasn't easy to find him. Why didn't you bring him back? Some unforeseen events happened. Listen to me slowly. All right, go ahead. Di Lin Xian and Xiao Wanrong looked at Di Yujue together, their eyes filled with anticipation. Di Yujue also knew that his parents had always been concerned about Di Beichen's whereabouts, so he immediately told them everything that had happened after he went out this time. You mean to say that you were just one step away from bringing my precious grandson back? Di Lin Xian raised his eyebrows, his face filled with displeasure. Why can't you be a little faster? I'm really going to be angered to death by you. I've cultivated for so many years for nothing. Old man, why are you blaming Yujue again? He didn't want this to happen either. Xiao Wanrong hurriedly said, no matter what, at least this time, Yujue went out and found Beichen. Although we don't know where Beichen is now, since he's come to the upper realm, there are only a few cities at the entrance. As long as we send people over, we should be able to find him very quickly. Di Yujue nodded. I think so too. I've come back this time to send people to the various cities to find Beichen. Then what are you waiting for? Hurry up and go. Di Lin Xian was clearly an impatient person. He had waited for so many years and finally found his grandson's whereabouts with great difficulty. He really hated that he couldn't fly over to find Di Beichen. I have to draw a portrait first. That way, it'll be easier for everyone to find him. Then hurry up and draw. Xiao Wanrong and Di Yujue couldn't help but look at each other when they saw Di Lin Xian's anxious appearance. Their expressions were filled with amusement. In fact, even though Di Lin Xian often scolded him, Di Yujue had never taken it to heart. He knew his father's personality very well. He was used to it since he was young. Yujue, hurry up and draw. I really want to see what our grandson looks like. Xiao Wanrong's eyes were also filled with interest. Ever since they had seen Di Beichen when he was young, they had not seen Di Beichen again for many years. They did not know what Di Beichen looked like now, so they were very curious. Good, I'll do it right away. Di Yujue nodded. He immediately took out a pen and paper and prepared to draw Di Beichen's portrait. All these years, he had never drunk to his heart's content until he met Di Beichen. He had always treated Di Beichen as a close friend, so he had a deep impression of Di Beichen's appearance. Xiao Wanrong clapped her hands. Her eyes were filled with joy as she hurriedly said, "Oh right, should we inform Yanqing now? Yanqing will definitely be very happy when she finds out." Mother, let me tell Yanqing about this matter later, Di Beichen said slowly. All these years, Lin Yanqing had never been willing to forgive him. He had also not gotten along well with Lin Yanqing for a long time. This time, he brought this news back with the hope that he could tell Lin Yanqing properly. He could imagine how happy Lin Yanqing would be after hearing this news. He also hoped that Lin Yanqing would forgive him. Chapter 4184. Di Yujue began to draw Di Beichen's appearance. He knew that the Di Beichen he had met before was in disguise. He knew this when he saw Xiren and Shangwan Yingying. After all, the Xiren and Shangwan Yingying he had met before did not look like this. On the way to find Di Beichen, he had learned a lot about Di Beichen from Xiren and Shangwan Yingying. He also had a certain understanding of Di Baichen's appearance. Fortunately, Xiren had drawn Di Baichen's appearance before. He had already imprinted it deeply in his heart. At this moment, he had to draw a few more portraits so that it would be easier for his subordinates to find him. As Di Yujue drew stroke by stroke, Di Baichen's appearance slowly appeared. Di Linxian and Xiao Wanrong had been standing by the side, only wanting to see how their precious grandson looked like. At this moment, when they saw the outline of Di Yujue's face, the joy in their eyes grew stronger. Yes, this appearance. He's really handsome. Xiao Wanrong's face was filled with a wide smile. It seems that Beichun has inherited your and Yinqing's good points. He's much better looking than any of the juniors I've seen all these years. When Di Linxian noticed the handsome young man in the portrait, the smile in his eyes widened. He could not help but say, "Isn't this all because he has inherited my good points? Back then, I was very famous in the upper realm. Many girls liked me." "Old man, stop bragging." Xiao Wanrong glanced at Di Linxian. "Why don't you take a look at yourself now? What's wrong with me now?" Di Linxian was very dissatisfied. "Look at Yujue. Isn't it because of me?" When Di Yujue heard Di Linxuan's narcissistic words, he couldn't help but raise his head and a smile appeared on his face. Ever since Beichen had disappeared, he had not seen Di Linxian so happy for a long time. Fortunately, he had brought back news of Di Beichen this time. When Di Beichen reunited with them, he could imagine how happy Di Linxian and the others would be. Because of his mistake, his family had been depressed and sad for so many years. He only hoped that he could find Di Beichen as soon as possible so that they could be reunited. That was clearly because of me. Fortunately, you pestered me to marry you back then. Otherwise, I really don't know what your child looks like now. Xiao Wanrong rolled her eyes at Di Linxian, but a deep smile appeared on her face. "You were the one who begged me to marry you, didn't you?" Xiao Wanrong glared and said, "Yujue, you be the judge." "Father, mother, I wasn't even born at that time. I can't say for sure." Di Yujue shrugged. His deep eyes were as bright as the stars. They had not bickered like this for a very long time. He really missed it when he saw it again. Xiao Wanrong and Di Linxian glared at each other when they heard that. Clearly, they were certain that the other party was the one who had pursued them. That's right. "Father, mother, I have something important to tell you," Di Yujue suddenly said. "What is it?" Di Linxian and Xiao Wanrong stopped joking. Instead, they were very serious. Now, as long as it was related to Di Beichen, it was absolutely important to them. Chapter 4185. Beichen is already married, and his wife is also very outstanding. Following Di Yujue's words, Di Linxian and Xiao Wanrong could not help but stare blankly. A thick sense of astonishment surfaced on their faces. "He's already married?" Di Yujue nodded slightly. "As you know, Beichen has a cursed body, and his legs were originally crippled. Fortunately, he met Bailey Hongzhuang, who helped him change his physique and allowed him to grow until now. Otherwise, with the tyranny of the cursed body and the medical skills of the lower realm, I'm afraid that we really wouldn't be able to find him." "Is our granddaughter-in-law's name Bailey Hongzhuang?" Xiao Wanrong's eyes lit up. "I didn't expect our grandson to be so fast. He didn't even need our help to arrange it, and has already helped us to marry our granddaughter-in-law. This is great news." "That's right. Her name is Bailey Hongzhuang." Di Yujue smiled faintly. "I've seen them before, but they had disguised themselves at that time, so I didn't recognize them. According to the situation that I understood at that time, the husband and wife have a very good relationship. They had previously gone to the Penglai Palace to help Beichun find a medicine to treat his illness. This Miss Bailey is wholeheartedly devoted to Beichun. As a father, Di Yujue only wished for his son to be happy. Furthermore, he had not been able to take care of Di Beichun all these years. He did not know how to make up for the guilt in his heart. Now that Beichun was so sincere to his wife, he naturally hoped that everyone in the family would agree. However, according to his judgment, Di Linxian and Xiao Wanrong did not seem like people who would object. As expected, I didn't expect this granddaughter-in-law to be so amazing. In this case, Beichen's survival is entirely thanks to granddaughter-in-law. Xiao Wanrong immediately understood and couldn't help but clap her hands. Io, our grandson is really lucky. He happened to find a wife with such brilliant medical skills. This is simply our family's fortune. Looking at Xiao Wanrong's appearance, Di Yujue smiled and nodded. Yes, it's all thanks to Miss Bailey. Old man, why aren't you saying anything? Cough, cough. Di Lin Xian coughed lightly and said, How long have they been married? Is there any news about my great-grandson? Di Yujue and Xiao Wanrong couldn't help but be stunned when they heard that. When they realized what Di Lin Xian had said, they couldn't help but laugh. Old man, you're thinking too far ahead. Di Lin Xuan's face stiffened. What do you mean by far? Wouldn't it be much faster if they got married? How long has it been since we had a baby? Father, this matter will have to wait until we find Beichen and Hong Zhuang before you ask them. Di Yujue spoke up. Di Lin Xian nodded. Then why aren't you drawing quickly? Yujue, how has Beichen been all these years? Has he suffered? Beichen's luck is pretty good. He was picked up by the sect master of the Tiangang sect in the lower realm. He raised him as his own grandson and later handed the entire Tiangang sect to Beichen. Di Yujue's expression softened. This was something he was extremely grateful for. If Beichen had suffered a lot all these years, then he really didn't know how to face it. Fortunately, the heavens pitted Beichen and allowed him to meet Situ Yin. All these years, he had been living very well, and Situ Yin had raised him very well. Chapter 4186. When the time comes, we have to thank them properly. Di Lin Xuan's expression was serious. After so many years, we owe them a lot. They even let Beichen become the sect leader. They really treat us with sincerity. If they were not sure whether they really took care of Di Beichen before, then from the fact that they were willing to hand over the position of sect leader to Di Beichen, they could tell that they really treated Di Beichen as their grandson. Otherwise, he would not have handed over his sect to Di Beichen. Di Yujue nodded slightly. I've already expressed my gratitude to them. Tiangang sect is also a very powerful sect in the lower realm, so we don't have to worry about Beichen being taken advantage of in the past. With such an identity, I'm sure he's living well in the past. Not only that, sect leader Situ is Hong Zhuang's grandfather. Speaking of which, their marriage is really a coincidence. No wonder. Xiao Wanrong suddenly understood. In that case, our granddaughter-in-law's family has done us a great favor. We must treat our granddaughter-in-law well in the future and not let Beichen bully our granddaughter-in-law. That's a must. Di Lin Xuan's voice was loud and clear. Our Di family always knows how to repay kindness. With such a great favor, Beichen must treat her well for the rest of his life. Don't worry, their relationship is very good. According to the situation I understand, Beichen will not treat Hong Zhuang badly. The great-grandson, Yuan should not be too far away. Di Yujue's face was filled with a joyful smile. Although they did not participate in Di Beichen's marriage, they were very happy to know that the husband and wife were harmonious and happy. After Di Yujue drew a few portraits, he kept one and kept it in his Chinquan bag. After instructing people to look for Di Beichen in all the major cities, he went to his residence. Although it was his residence, he had not been here for a long time. When he thought of his wife, Di Yujue felt extremely helpless. Ever since Di Beichen disappeared, Lin Yinqing had been unwilling to talk to him. Every time she saw him, she couldn't help but cry. Actually, he knew that Yinqing had deep feelings for him. When she was pregnant, Yinqing had been looking forward to seeing Beichen. Ever since she found out that Beichen possessed the cursed physique, Yinqing had paid special attention to Beichen. Later on, Beichen had disappeared, so it was easy to imagine how great of a blow it was to her. Usually, when he did not appear, Yinqing would often think of this matter. Once he appeared, it would undoubtedly remind her of this matter. As time passed, he didn't dare rashly appear before Yinqing, so as to avoid hurting her feelings. However, this time, he could finally bring good news to Yinqing. When he thought about how happy Yinqing might look, he felt a burst of joy in his heart. Inside the room, A woman in plain robes was seated on the bed as she looked out the window. The woman was extremely beautiful, like a lotus flower that had just emerged from the water. Her skin was delicate, while her facial features were peerlessly exquisite. Anyone who laid eyes on her would believe that she was a peerless beauty. However, the space between the woman's brows was filled with worry while her eyes were filled with sorrow. At this moment, her expression was rather complicated as she stared out the window. She had heard that Dujue had returned. When she had first heard the news, she had been overjoyed. However, not long after, her happiness had turned into complicated feelings. Chapter 4187. Madam, now that the young master has returned, you shouldn't treat him so coldly anymore. It hasn't been easy for the young master all these years. In order to make you happy, he's tried everything. Besides, he hasn't returned for a very long time. If you continue to push the young master away, that won't do. The maidservant next to her noticed the complicated look on Lin Yunqing's face and could not help but voice her thoughts. She had been by Lin Yunqing's side since she was a child. Even though she was a maidservant, the two of them got along more like sisters. She knew very well that with Dujue's status, there were countless women who yearned for him. The madam may be a peerless beauty, but there were many other beauties in the upper realm as well. If the young master's feelings for the madam had not run so deep that he would not accept anyone else's feelings, the madam would not know what kind of situation she would be in. All these years, she had watched the madam push the young master away again and again. She could not help but worry. Lin Yunqing was silent. Her gaze was distant and complicated, making it impossible for anyone to see through her thoughts. Seeing this, the maidservant continued, Madam, actually, the young master was very upset about what had happened back then. This was definitely not what he wanted to see. Why are you doing this? The corners of Lin Yunqing's eyes were moist. How could she not be aware of all this? However, when she thought about how her infant child had wandered off to an unknown place, she could not help but feel her heart ache. Only a mother would be able to understand this. She understood Dujue's sincerity towards her and understood that Dujue's pain in his heart was no less than hers. However, after this incident, it was as if an irreparable crack had appeared between the two of them. As long as one looked at each other, one would be able to think of the most painful thing in one's heart. Every time she opened the wound, it would be filled with blood. This time, Dujue had been away for so long, and she was afraid. She was afraid that her actions over the years had hurt Dujue so much that he would no longer want to pay attention to her. Now that Dujue had clearly returned for a while, but he had not come to see her, she felt a little upset. So what if he's here? Lin Yunqing asked herself. Could it be that she could completely forget about this matter and never mention it again? She couldn't. She knew this all too well. Just as Lin Yunqing was pondering, Dujue's figure slowly appeared in her line of sight. He was still as elegant and handsome as ever. Just a glance from him was enough to make people blush and fluster. When a maidservant saw that Dujue had arrived, her face was filled with joy. Madam, please don't drive young lord away this time. After whispering these words, the servant girl opened the door and welcomed Dujue in. Then she tactfully left. Yunqing, Dujue called out softly, his deep eyes filled with tenderness and love. Even though Lin Yunqing had always been unwilling to talk to him, his feelings for her had never faded. You're back, Lin Yunqing said slowly. Dujue nodded slightly. I've been away for quite some time this time. You must be tired after being out for so many days. Let me pour you a cup of tea. Chapter 4188. When Dujue suddenly grabbed her hand, Lin Yunqing couldn't help but be stunned. She instinctively wanted to struggle free, but she soon relaxed. The maidservant was right. She could not continue on like this. At the end of the day, if Dujue had not doted on her so much, her situation in the D family would have changed. Most importantly, she loved Dujue. Dujue had naturally noticed Lin Yunqing's reaction, but he did not take it to heart. The doting look in his eyes was still as strong as ever. Yinqing, I've been gone for so long this time, and I've finally found our son's whereabouts. Lin Yinqing couldn't help but be stunned when she heard this. The teacup that she had just received immediately fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. The tea splashed on her skirt, but she didn't seem to notice at all. She just stared fixedly at Di Yujue. Yujue, what did you just say? I said that I've found our son's whereabouts. I've already sent people to search for him. I believe that it won't be long before we find him. When that time comes, our family will be reunited. Lin Yinqing covered her mouth with her hand. She could barely control her emotions and wanted to cry out in alarm. However, her eyes gradually moistened and hot tears rolled down her cheeks. Are you telling the truth? Have you really found our son? Di Yujue nodded affirmatively. You didn't hear wrong. Everything I said is true. Tears flowed uncontrollably from the corners of her eyes. Lin Yinqing burst into tears in an instant, unable to control her emotions at all. It had been over 20 years. Ever since her child had gone missing, she had never been truly happy for a single day. As long as she thought that her child might have died or suffered all kinds of pain, her heart would ache to the extreme. However, now that Di Yujue had finally found her child's whereabouts, she was so excited and happy that she could not stop sobbing. Di Yujue could not help but pull her into his arms when he saw Lin Yinqing's surprised yet fragile look. He gently wiped away her tears. Yinqing, don't cry. It wasn't easy for us to find Bewitching. You should be happy. Lin Yinqing nodded. Yes, I should be happy. I should be happy. Even so, Lin Yinqing couldn't help but shed tears. The greater the pain, the greater the surprise. You said his name is Bewitching? That's right. His name is now Bewitching, Deep Bewitching. Then, is he doing well now? Lin Yinqing's voice trembled slightly, and her expression was filled with hesitation and nervousness. After so many years, when she thought of the cursed body, she was almost certain that Di Bewitching was not still alive. However, Di Yujue telling her all this now proved that Di Bewitching was still alive. He's doing very well. He hasn't suffered as much as we thought. He's a blessed child. Di Yujue knew that Lin Yinqing was most worried about whether Di Bewitching had been doing well all these years, so he immediately told her the situation. After hearing everything, Lin Yinqing heaved a sigh of relief. That's great. He's indeed a blessed child. He's still doing very well without us by his side. Yujue, tell me quickly. How did you find him? Why didn't you come back with him? Hurry up and tell me everything. I want to know everything about him. Chapter 4189. Lin Yinqing had never participated in Di Bewitching's life over the years. Although she had missed it, she also wanted to understand what had happened to Di Bewitching during the years she had missed. At least, this could make up for some of her regrets. Okay, I'll tell you everything I know. Di Yujue's face was filled with a faint smile. He could understand Lin Yinqing's emotions. In fact, when he knew that Di Bewitching was his biological son, he also wanted to understand all of Di Bewitching's past experiences. Therefore, whether it was in Tiangang's sect or when he was traveling with Wenziren, he was learning about Di Bei City. This was undoubtedly extremely precious to him as a father. He could no longer participate in his past life. At least, he wanted to understand so that when he met Di Bewitching in the future, he would not be so unfamiliar with him. After Di Yujue told Lin Yinqing all the things that happened after he left this time, Lin Yinqing's face gradually recovered. The worry between her eyebrows quietly faded and was replaced by a trace of joy and expectation. Then, Bewitching and Hongzhuang have now come to the upper realm. Will they be in danger? Lin Yinqing's eyes were filled with concern. The upper realm was not like the lower realm. The cultivators here were extremely powerful. Di Bewitching and Hongzhuang had obviously just obtained the authority to come here. If they got into trouble, they might lose their lives if they were not careful. Usually, the cultivators who just came to the lower realm were the easiest to pay with their lives. She did not want this to happen to Bewitching and Hongzhuang. That was something she could not bear. You don't have to worry too much. Based on my understanding of them, their strength is also very outstanding. What's more, Beichen has obtained the inheritance of the dark force this time. His strength should have improved greatly. I believe that there shouldn't be any problem with the two of them being together. The people we've sent out will find them as soon as possible. Di Yujue was obviously full of confidence in Di Beichen. In fact, since the first time he saw Di Beichen, he felt that he was a very outstanding young man. Back then, Di Beichen and the others had just arrived at Penglai Island not long ago. Yet, they were able to gain a foothold in such a short period of time and become the most sought-after newcomers. From this, one could see how capable they were. Although the upper realm was filled with trials, he still believed that with their abilities, they would be able to solve them. Seeing that Di Yujue was so confident, Lin Yunqing's expression also relaxed a little. She knew that Di Yujue's vision had always been very accurate. Since he said so, it proved that Beichen and the others did indeed have the ability to deal with it. That's good. Why don't we go find them together? Lin Yunqing could not help but stand up. Her eyes were filled with anxiety. She could not wait to reach the city immediately and look for Di Beichen and Hong Zhuang. Wait, Di Yujue said. Without waiting for Di Yujue to finish speaking, Lin Yunqing could not help but frown. Her expression was filled with pleading. Yujue, I really can't stay here. After so many years, I haven't heard the slightest bit of news about him. Now that I finally know that he has come to the upper realm to see you, how can I stay here and wait? I must go find him. Even if it's just a second earlier, it's still good. Chapter 4190. Yunqing, I'll go with you no matter which city you're going to look for him. Di Yujue's face was filled with a gentle and doting smile. He understood Lin Yunqing's feelings all too well. In fact, even he himself could not resist the urge to look for him. After all, that was their son. However, before you go, you should take a look at our son's portrait first. Otherwise, even if you see him, you won't be able to recognize him. Lin Yunqing was shocked when she heard Di Yujue's words. Following that, a look of ecstasy appeared on her face. You're not going to stop me. Why should I stop you? Di Yujue held Lin Yunqing's hand. It was my mistake that caused you and your son to be separated for so many years. Am I supposed to stop you from looking for him now? Don't forget, I'm his father. I care about him just as much, and I want to see him. Tears flickered in Lin Yunqing's eyes. All the resentment she had felt towards Di Yujue over the years instantly dissipated into nothingness. Di Yujue had indeed made an unforgivable mistake back then. However, she had been punishing Di Yujue over the past 20 years because of this mistake. In fact, what she had done was very wrong as well. However, from the beginning to the end, Di Yu had definitely taken care of her like this, causing her heart to be filled with warmth and at the same time, also filled with guilt. Lin Yunqing reached out to wipe the tears from the corner of her eyes. A smile then appeared on her face, and her eyes were filled with joy. Do you have a portrait of Beichen? Di Yujue gently nodded. I had drawn a portrait of Beichen as soon as I got back. Father and mother have already met him, so I've specially brought a portrait for you to see. Quick, show it to me, Lin Yunqing said impatiently. All these years, she had always imagined how their child would look like, but she had never been able to imagine his exact features. She never thought that Di Yujue would actually draw a portrait of Beichen. She was filled with anticipation. Looking at Lin Yunqing's impatient look, Di Yujue immediately took out the portrait. When Lin Yunqing saw the outstanding man in the portrait, her eyes gradually changed, and her hands could not help but cover her mouth. These eyebrows, this nose, these facial lines, she suddenly felt that this should be the appearance of their child. All of this made her feel exceptionally familiar. This appearance clearly had the shadow of her and Di Yujue. For more than 20 years, she had never been able to figure out Di Beichen's true appearance. Until this moment, she suddenly understood that this was their child. Di Yujue was definitely not lying to her. Isn't he very handsome? Di Yujue's lips curled up slightly. Di Beichen's appearance was truly a case of the student surpassing the master. Ever since he found out about Di Beichen's true appearance, he understood why the former had to disguise himself with such an appearance. He was afraid that it would easily attract some trouble. Lin Yunqing nodded heavily and gazed deeply at the portrait. Her eyes were filled with a loving light. Very handsome, really very handsome. I heard that Hong Zhuang is also a rare beauty. However, when I met her at that time, she was also in disguise, so I don't know her true appearance. However, we'll know when we find them. I want to thank our daughter-in-law. If it wasn't for her by Beichen's side, I'm afraid that we would never be able to reunite with Beichen again. Chapter 4191. Although she had never met her daughter-in-law, Lin Yunqing had a good impression of her. This was because this daughter-in-law had saved her son. Not only that, Beichen was greatly indebted to his daughter-in-law's family. Hong Zhuang's family had taken care of Beichen so much. As Beichen's family, they should be grateful. Moreover, from Di Yujua's description, she already understood that Bailey Hong Zhuang was definitely a good lady. Not only was she sincere to Beichen, but she was also willing to give up everything for Beichen. She must treat such a daughter-in-law well in the future. As she said this, Lin Yunqing could not help but look at Di Yujua tentatively. She knew very well that although Miss Bailey had married Beichen and her status in the lower realm was not simple, there was still a gap between her and Beichen's status. With the Di family status, if Beichen had grown up in the Di family, his background would not have been suitable. However, she did not have such requirements for Beichen now. She hoped that the rest of the Di family would not have such requirements as well. That's right, Di Yujua nodded. We should really thank her properly. They were both sensible people. They would remember this kindness in their hearts and would definitely not treat Bailey Hong Zhuang unfairly. He knew that Lin Yunqing had deliberately asked this question to confirm this point. Obviously, the couple had the same idea. After understanding Di Yujua's attitude, Lin Yunqing heaved a sigh of relief. That's good. The two of them chatted as they prepared for a while. Then, they left the Di family and began to rush without stopping. After walking around the streets, Bailey Hong Zhuang realized that the currency in the upper realm had been converted into spiritual stones. No matter what one bought, one would use spiritual stones to calculate the price. This was because spiritual stones were something that every cultivator needed. It was undoubtedly very suitable to use them as currency. Gold coins could also be circulated, but gold coins were very expensive to buy spirit stones. Fortunately, I have given the prescription to the Penglai Palace. Now I still have a lot of spirit stones on hand. It will be enough for the time being. Bailey Hong Zhuang couldn't help but sigh. When she went out, she couldn't do anything without money. Fortunately, she didn't have to worry about this for the time being. However, not only did she need lodging, but she also needed spirit stones for her cultivation. The consumption rate was also very shocking. Previously, when she fainted, Wang Yanhan sent her to the inn and helped her find a doctor. These expenses were all borne by Wang Yanhan. She once wanted to return these spirit stones to Wang Yanhan, but she was rejected. According to Wang Yanhan, she had just arrived in the upper realm, so she wouldn't have many spirit stones in her possession. So, it was better to be frugal at this time. Otherwise, it would be troublesome if she needed them in the future. Wang Yanhan had already joined the forces of Rong and City. He could receive a lot of spirit stones every month, which was much more than the amount in the lower realm. In this regard, she could only keep this gratitude in her heart. When she first came to the upper realm, she was almost powerless to resist. Fortunately, she met Wang Yanhan. If she had met some evil people, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Fortunately, she was lucky enough to meet her senior brother after coming here. No matter what, I should do something. Chapter 4192. Master, do you have any ideas? Looking at Bailey Hong Zhuang's thoughtful look, Xiao He couldn't help but ask. Xiao He knew her master's temperament very well. At this moment, her master's expression was obviously thinking about something. Bailey Hong Zhuang nodded slightly. I plan to draw an inscription and give it to senior brother Wanyan. In these days of conversation with Wanyan Han, she also learned that even in the upper realm, there were not many inscription masters. Now, her inscription technique had improved again. Although she hadn't used it for a while, she had never given up. After all, inscription technique could still play a big role in many cases. As far as she knew, Wanyan Han also wanted to find an inscription master to help him inscribe on his weapon to improve the power of the weapon. However, there was only one inscription master in Rome and City. With Wanyan Han's current status, even if he went to ask for an inscription master, there wouldn't be any results. She believed that if she drew an inscription and gave it to him, he would be very happy. Listening to Bailey Hongshuang's words, Xiao He and Xiao Bai's eyes also lit up. They clapped and said, "Master, your idea is really good. Senior brother Wanyan has taken care of us so much. We should also give him a surprise." With senior brother Wanyan's current strength, the level of inscription required to upgrade his weapon to suit his current situation is not low. I don't have enough materials in my hands. Let's go to the inscription shop to buy some materials first. Bailey Hongshuang thought and said, "Okay." Xiao He and Xiao Bai both agreed. After Bailey Hongshuang bought all the materials needed for the inscription, she also had a certain understanding of the prices in the upper realm. Sure enough, the prices here were much more expensive than the lower realm. Similarly, the things here were also more abundant. Some materials that were difficult to find in the lower realm were much more likely to be found here. Some of the precious materials in the lower realm were also brought to the upper realm. After returning to the inn, Bailey Hongshuang began to think about what kind of inscription to draw for Wanyan Han. The inscriptions needed to be suitable for each practitioner's characteristics and attributes. Only in this way could the inscriptions bring out the best effect. Fortunately, she had seen Wanyan Han's weapon before and had a certain understanding in her heart. According to what she had learned before, Bailey Hongshuang began to think carefully until she finally decided on the inscription method. Wanyan Han was usually very busy with cultivation. As Bailey Hongshuang's body gradually recovered, he also came over every few days. Because Bailey Hongshuang did not know anyone else here, he was the only one who was relatively close to her. On this day, when Wanyan Han received something from Bailey Hongshuang, he couldn't help but be stunned. Then, a look of astonishment appeared in his eyes. "Little junior sister, this is..." "Inscription." Bailey Hongshuang smiled and said. Wanyan Han stared blankly at the ice-blue inscription on his hand. He naturally knew that this was an inscription, but he never thought that Bailey Hongshuang would actually give him an inscription. "Little junior sister, where did you get this inscription?" Chapter 4193. Although she basically put her mind on Beichen's cursed body and the inheritance of the magic tower during this time, she was still very confident in her inscription technique. She believed that after Wanyan Han's weapon used her inscription, its power would definitely increase by a level. At least, with Wanyan Han's current cultivation, it was completely enough. After hearing that this inscription was drawn by Bailey Hongshuang herself, Wanyan Han couldn't help but be stunned. His eyes were full of surprise. "Little junior sister, I really didn't expect you to be an inscription master," Wanyan Han couldn't help but exclaim. He carefully looked at Bailey Hongshuang, as if this news had given him too much of a surprise. "You are so young, but you have mastered the inscription technique. I really underestimated you before. When I saw you, I felt that your temperament was extraordinary. You're not an ordinary person. Now it seems that I was not wrong." What he said was the truth. When he first saw Bailey Hongshuang, although she was dying at the entrance, he still felt that this woman was not simple at first glance. Of course, her beautiful face was also hard to ignore. Now that he thought about it, he was also somewhat fortunate. Fortunately, he met Bailey Hongshuang first. Otherwise, if such a beautiful woman was taken away by someone with evil intentions, he really didn't know what would happen. Listening to Wanyan Han's praise, Bailey Hongshuang's smile gradually widened. She said with a smile, "Senior brother Wanyan, I designed it according to the characteristics of your weapon, but I don't know whether it is to your liking or not. Wang Yanhan's weapon had ice attribute. This was something she had discovered a long time ago. Thinking about it, Wang Yanhan's attack method also had ice attribute. Therefore, when she designed it, she mainly amplified the attack power of ice attribute. To my liking, Wang Yanhan quickly said, "Little junior sister personally designed it for me. How can it not be suitable for me? I will use this inscription. The effect must be very good." Wang Yanhan's expression changed slightly. He understood that Bailey Hongzhuang had heard that his weapon lacked an inscription, so she specially drew one for him. Although he felt that with Bailey Hongzhuang's current age, the effect of the inscription she drew would not be very good for him, no matter what, this was his little junior sister's kind intention, so he naturally had to accept it. What's more, he had already tried. With his conditions, he simply could not afford to pay the inscription master. There was only one inscription master in Rome and city, but his inscription technique was very powerful. Usually, there were countless people who came to ask for an inscription, and the conditions they offered were even more amazing. In addition to him, there were also some other inscription masters. However, their inscription skills were not outstanding enough, and they would not be of any help to him. He had already decided to give up. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang took out this inscription. To him, this was already a very good gesture. Bailey Hongzhuang saw that Wang Yanhan felt that this inscription was suitable even though he did not know what it was used for. While she was surprised, the smile in her eyes became more and more intense. Senior brother Wang Yan was indeed a good person. He took good care of his little junior sister. Senior brother Wang Yan, let me introduce the effect of this inscription to you, Bailey Hongzhuang said with a smile. Chapter 4194. I set this inscription according to the ice attribute of your weapon. It increases the attack power of the ice attribute. According to my judgment, the attack power should be increased by 50%. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, Wang Yanhan stared at her with his eyes wide open. He couldn't believe it. Little junior sister, did I hear wrong? You said 50%? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Yes, it is 50%. Originally, I wanted to increase it a little more, but there is a certain danger. It may damage the weapon. I don't have enough assurance, so the increase rate is controlled at 50%. Her delicate face revealed a bit of helplessness. She had to admit that she still needed to practice this level of inscription. Because her cultivation had not reached this level before, and her spiritual power had not increased, so the inscription technique was limited to a certain level. However, as far as the current situation was concerned, she felt that it should be enough. At the same time, she also made a decision. That was, she had to practice inscription technique during this time and strive to increase the level of inscription technique. However, Bailey Hongzhuang did not know that Wang Yanhan was completely stunned by the 50% that she said. Generally speaking, an inscription that could increase a weapon's power by 20 to 30% was already very good. 50% was something that he had never thought of before. Originally, according to his idea, Bailey Hongzhuang's inscription could increase the power of his weapon by 10%, and he would be very satisfied. After all, little junior sister was so young. Although she had learned inscription technique, there was obviously a certain gap. However, little junior sister at this moment said such a large increase. Even if an inscription master helped him inscribe, the effect would not be better. In addition, I added an extra skill. That is, you can store a martial skill in your weapon. The stored martial skill can be instantaneously released. At a critical moment, it should be able to play a big role. Although this skill doesn't seem to be very useful, the life-saving effect is good. Bailey Hongzhuang looked serious. She felt that this setting was very practical. At a critical moment, this skill could save her life. You've added another skill? Instant cast. Wang Yanhan was completely dumbfounded. As far as he knew, it was very difficult to add another skill to the inscription. It was a test of the inscription master's skills. Ordinary inscriptionists wouldn't design inscriptions so carefully unless they received huge benefits or helping their loved ones. He didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to set up such a skill for him. Most importantly, this skill was too practical. Once his essence energy was insufficient, or when he was in a critical juncture, this was completely a protective talisman. He could definitely store his strongest martial arts technique in it for a rainy day. If such a technique were to be spread out, who knew how many people would be envious? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. With my current inscription technique, I can only do this much. I hope you will like it. I don't just like it. I like it so much. Wang Yanhan's face was full of smiles. Little junior sister, you're really amazing. That you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.